Next, we'll be talking about 2.2 and 2.3, which are living processes in unicellular and multicellular organisms. Firstly, unicellular. Unicellular means only one cell, but they still live a life. They still have a life, right? So, how do they live? Number one is how do they move? So, they move in different ways. Amoeba will always change its shape when it encounters obstacles. Basically, they have these false feet called pseudopodium, and the pseudopodium will extend, and then it will extend in front, and then it will try, and then it will make a circle and try to go back into the cell. So it's like, if the members like this thing will extend out and then come back, and then the amoeba will move forward like that. So that's how the movement works. For the paramecium, they have these cilia. So the cilia is basically like these hairs at the outside, and the hairs help them move. Next is nutrition. So how do they get their food? For the amoeba, like its movement, when they see food, the pseudopodium extends out, and then it will go back. It will engulf, basically. It will trap the bacteria in, and then that's how they get their food. So this thing is called phagocytosis. For paramecium, the presence of cilium bead helps transfer food particles into the oral groove. So I guess what this means is the cilia will move slowly across the food until it reaches the place where it eats. The food vacuole is combined with lysosome. The food particles are hydrolyzed by the enzyme lysosome in the lysosomes. The nutrients are absorbed into the cytoplasm, and undigested food is discharged. Okay, these are not that as important now. Next is responding to stimuli. So you respond to a lot of stimuli like chemicals, touch, or light, and they move away lah. Because they can only do two things. Number one is move to you. Number two is move away. Next is respiration. So respiration occurs through simple diffusion, but they don't have like any special respiration. They just exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide like how we normally would, or how plants normally would. And how do they grow? They just make more cytoplasm. Next page has a bit more stuff about this. Excretion. How do they poop out? So they do something called Osmo Regulation. So basically, these waste products are removed by diffusion. And how does that work? How does that work? I'm not so sure either. But basically, when they are removed, oh, I know. It does explain it here. My bad. So because these unicellular organisms usually live in water, water will come in to make it to increase its turgidity, so the vacuole becomes full, and then when the vacuole gets too big, it can't absorb water anymore, so it can't just keep it in, right? It has to let the water out. So that's how contraction, and that's when contraction occurs, and that's when your waste is secreted. How do they reproduce? Asexual reproduction, and the method that you use is binary fission. But some do form spores. So it says here, when the environmental conditions are not suitable, they form spores. For paramecium species, they actually do undergo sexual reproduction, but I don't think they'll talk much about that. Next is multicellular organisms. So they have a lot of types of cells. Firstly, they have the muscle cells, and these are for movement. Nerve cells are for nerve impulses. White blood cells help with protecting your body. Red blood cells help to transport oxygen. Epithelial cells are they cause survival of organs such as digestive tract. Okay, basically they are the organ skin cells, like We have skin cells, and then we have organ skin cells. And then sperm cells are, for reproduction. For plants, they have the sieve tube element, which are long cylindrical tubes arranged from end to end, and they transport organic materials. Basically, they're for the phloem. The sieve tube is for the phloem, and then the xylem vessel is obviously for the xylem. It helps with it's a hollow tube, and it helps with transporting water and mineral salts. The palisade mesophyll cells have a lot of chlorophyll, and they are usually almost outside because they want to absorb as much light as possible. We'll get more to this in like another topic, so I'm not going to emphasize them here. Spongy mesophyll cells are loosely arranged, and they allow gaseous exchange. Gut cells, they control the opening and the closing of the stoma, and this is where gaseous exchange happens. And root hair cells have help in absorption of water and mineral salts. Again, we'll talk more about this in like another chapter. Cell organization in humans. So tissues are okay. They talk about tissues, like how do these cells make up a complete organism. Firstly, they must have tissue. These cells must be grouped in tissues, and tissues are basically a group of cells with the same function, same structure. So there are four main types: epithelial, muscle, nerve, and connective. So epithelial covers the skin and hollow surfaces in the body. So basically, it is your skin, and it is your organ skin. So not all of them are the same, but they do the same thing, which is protection. So there is one at the mouth and esophagus. There is one at your lungs. There is one at your kidney. There's one at your at your kidney ducts, your lungs, your tubules, your glands, basically. And then the ones at the trachea have these cilia, which remember is hairs, these small hairs. And as I mentioned earlier, they also have these tissues at the small intestine. Muscle tissues are for movement, and there are three main types: smooth muscle, skeletal muscle, and cardiac muscle. So smooth muscles enable these involuntary activities such as peristalsis. Skeletal muscle is for moving, like actual movement when you walk, I guess. Cardiac muscle is for your heart. Nerve tissue, again, these will come out in another chapter, so they're not as important to bring them up now. Nerve tissues are made of neurons and nerve cells, and they also have and each neuron consists of dendrites and axons, and basically they detect stimuli and then they send information in the form of signals. Again, these will come out in another chapter. Connective tissues. So I haven't really seen these that often, so it's better to know more about them now. But I think it's also involved in the chapter about muscles. So firstly, there's blood tissue, and then there's bones, there's loose connective tissues, there's fibrous connective tissues, there's adipose tissue, and there's also these cartilages. Next is tissue organization in plants. So parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma. Again, they'll come out in Form 5. So parenchyma is where you store your nutrients. Collenchyma is support to young plants. Sclerenchyma is for mechanical support. Again, parenchyma, I think you mentioned this earlier. No, it doesn't. These are palisade mesophyll cells. Okay. And then there's the vascular bundle. So there's the xylem and the phloem tissues. So xylem is for water and mineral salts. Phloem is for organic matters. I don't really need to talk about this much. Okay, I'm not so sure if you need to know much about these density of cell components. I think you should read this yourself. But basically, if they require a lot of energy, like sperm cells, they need to move a lot, or muscle cells because they need to contract and relax a lot, there's going to be a lot of mitochondria. And then if the cell is for photosynthesis, of course you need more chlorophyll. And if the cell has more enzymes or has more transfer of things of nutrients in the human body, then you need the endoplasmic reticulum and the Golgi apparatus for these transfers. Okay.